Before someone tells you they love you, they show up. That's the first and most honest signal. And by showing up, I don't simply mean physically being there. I mean something deeper, something existential. Presence is not merely about occupying space beside another person. It's about willingly engaging with the emotional realities of another human being over time and without demand for reward. When someone is consistently present in your life, especially in moments that are inconvenient or uncomfortable, it reveals something profound, that your well-being matters to them. That's not a casual sentiment. That's the early structure of love. Presence speaks to commitment, and commitment, psychologically, is not something we make once and carry on effortlessly. It is a decision made over and over again, renewed daily through action. When someone keeps showing up, not just when it's easy or when they're getting something out of it, but even when it's hard or messy, what you're witnessing is a kind of moral orientation toward the other. They're saying with their behavior, you are not just part of my pleasure, you are part of my responsibility. And that responsibility is the architecture of mature love. Now, this isn't to suggest that everyone who sticks around is doing so out of love. Some people linger out of fear, out of dependency, or even out of manipulation. But when presence is combined with generosity, care, and a lack of expectation, when someone is there for you without keeping score, that's not neutrality, that's affection working its way toward devotion. In our culture, we're often obsessed with declarations. We want to hear the words, we want confirmation. But love, in its earliest and often most authentic stages, doesn't shout. It endures, it makes space, it listens, it shows up again and again until one day you realize this person has been quietly choosing why all along. And perhaps that's why the most enduring relationships are built not on fireworks, but on reliability. Because at the core of love is this truth: what you do consistently reveals more than what you say impulsively. Speech can lie. Behavior rarely does. So if you want to know if someone loves you, don't listen for grand statements. Watch how they show up. And if you want to love someone, start by being the person who is present. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. ChatGPT said, if presence is the foundation of love, then prioritization is the architecture that rises from it. You can tell a great deal about what someone values by looking not at what they say they value, but at what they consistently choose to prioritize. Time, energy, attention, these are finite resources. Where we place them tells the truth about what matters most to us. In love, this plays out in subtle but unmistakable ways. When someone consistently makes space in their life for you, not because they have nothing else to do, but because they rearrange their life to make that space, that's not convenience. That's care made manifest. People often confuse love with passion. Passion burns hot and fast, but it doesn't require prioritization. It only requires desire. Love, on the other hand, demands structure. It forces a person to confront the question, what matters more? And the answer, again and again, becomes evident in what they're willing to shift, what they're willing to sacrifice, and what they protect. That's not poetic. That's pragmatic. Love reveals itself not in how someone behaves when everything is going well, but in how they reorder their world when real conflict, pressure, or time constraints emerge. Now, we're not talking about grand theatrical gestures. We're talking about the quiet, disciplined, and consistent act of choosing someone. That choice often means saying no to something else, an opportunity, a comfort, a routine. But that's what gives love its weight. It's the recognition that this person, this relationship, is not peripheral. It is central. And the center of your life is what defines the structure of your existence. Psychologically, prioritization creates security, and security is the soil in which vulnerability grows. People open up, take risks, and build lives when they feel chosen. It's not about being everything to someone. It's about being enough to warrant their intentional choice. That's where love transitions from sentiment to significance. So the next time you find yourself wondering if someone truly loves you, don't just ask what they say. Ask where you fall on their list of priorities. Do they adjust their schedule for you? Do they include you in future plans? Do they protect your time together? These questions aren't about insecurity. They're about alignment. Because love that isn't prioritized eventually becomes neglected. Consistency. There's a word we don't give enough credit in matters of love. In a culture infatuated with intensity, we forget that what sustains relationships isn't the fire of occasional passion, but the steady burn of repeated action. You want to know if someone truly loves you? Look at what they do over time. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly, especially when it's inconvenient. That's the metric that counts. Psychologically speaking, humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We don't just respond to isolated gestures. We trust what we can predict. And consistency is precisely what allows trust to emerge and deepen. Love without consistency is like a beautiful house built on sand. No matter how stunning it looks, it won't last when the weather turns. The storms of life, stress, temptation, miscommunication will come. What determines whether a relationship survives them isn't how poetic the words are, but how reliable the actions are. Now, consistency doesn't mean perfection. We all fail. We forget birthdays, lose our temper, say things we regret, but true love returns. It repairs. It doesn't ghost you after conflict. It doesn't disappear in times of difficulty. It shows up again and again and again. That's the essence of commitment, not a one-time promise, but a pattern of returning, a psychological contract reinforced by daily behavior. We often romanticize spontaneity in love, surprises, impulsive trips, grand gestures. Those things are beautiful, but they don't build the foundation. What builds the foundation is the person who remembers to check in when you're anxious, who keeps their word when they said they'd call, who notices when you're off and stays curious rather than critical, who does the little things so often they stop looking little. Consistency is proof of internal alignment, when someone's words and actions are synchronized, when their behavior doesn't. They just match what they feel today, but aligns with a long-term orientation toward you. That's when love takes root. It's not sexy, it's not cinematic, but it's safe, and safety is what enables real intimacy to flourish. So if you're wondering whether someone loves you, stop looking for fireworks. Start looking for patterns. Look at the rhythms they create with you, the text in the morning, the support during stress, the way they make time for you even when they're tired. Love doesn't just express itself, it maintains itself. There's a principle in psychology that often goes unnoticed, but it's foundational to the experience of being loved. Attunement. It's not about grand declarations or overt affection. It's about being seen, known, and responded to in real time. When someone is attuned to you, they notice when your energy shifts, they hear what you're not saying, and they respond in ways that say, "You matter, I'm here." This kind of deep attentiveness is rare because it requires presence. And presence is costly. It means putting your phone down. It means pausing your own narrative long enough to enter someone else's. And it means being willing to feel with them without fixing, without fleeing, and without making it about you. That's why attunement is one of the deepest demonstrations of love. It says, "You're not alone in your inner world. I see you there." Philosophically, love isn't just about admiration. It's about recognition. To love someone is to say, "I've looked at you long enough, deeply enough, to begin to understand your fears, your longings, your patterns. I know what silence means in your voice. I know what tension means in your shoulders, and I'm listening even when you're not speaking." That level of awareness is what builds the kind of trust that transcends words. We can trace this back to early childhood development. Children who feel secure in their attachment aren't just the ones who are hugged or praised. They're the ones whose parents respond to their cues, who feed them when they cry, who soothe them when they're frightened, who mirror their emotions with care. That early responsiveness teaches the child, "I am worth noticing. My needs matter. I'm not invisible. And that internal belief becomes the foundation of all future intimacy. Adults are no different. In love, we're still asking the same question we asked as children. Do you see me? And the most powerful is ours. Your relationships answer that question not with speeches, but with sensitivity. When someone remembers what you said offhand 3 days ago, when they notice the hesitation in your voice and gently inquire, when they offer help before you ask, that's not just kindness. That's love showing up as attunement. So don't overlook the quiet power of being known. It's not flashy. It won't trend on social media. But it's what your nervous system craves. It's what your soul trusts. Because in the end, being deeply loved isn't about being constantly entertained or endlessly impressed. It's about being quietly, consistently understood. ChatGPT said, there's a quiet but undeniable form of love that reveals itself in consistency, not in dramatic gestures or impassioned speeches, but in the mundane, the repetitive, and the easily overlooked. A partner who shows up day after day through routine and conflict, through joy and frustration, is demonstrating something far more profound than momentary affection. They're making a promise, not in words, but in behavior, and that's where real love lives. Psychologically, we're wired to respond not just to what people say, but to what they do over time. This is why trust doesn't emerge from intensity. It emerges from repetition. A person can tell you they love you, and they might even mean it in that moment. But what truly matters is whether their actions align with those words consistently, especially when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. That's when love stops being a feeling and starts becoming a character trait. Consistency is a reflection of internal order. When someone consistently follows through, when they remember your preferences, respect your boundaries, support your goals, that's not an accident. That's structure. It means their love for you isn't a passing impulse. It's integrated into their daily conduct. They've chosen to orient their behavior toward your well-being, not just when it's easy, but when it costs them something. That's a mature form of love, a love that doesn't waver in chaos or flee at the first sign of difficulty. Philosophically speaking, love is not just an emotion, it's a commitment to act rightly toward another person over time. And in a world obsessed with novelty and excitement, consistency can feel almost boring. But boredom isn't the enemy of love. Neglect is. And you don't overcome neglect with passion. You overcome it with attention that endures. Consider this. The most meaningful relationships in your life were probably not built in a weekend. They were built over countless small choices to stay, to listen, to show up again. That's where love is forged, in those choices, in the effort repeated when it's no longer new, in the loyalty that holds even when no one else is watching. So if someone's presence feels stable, if they are there for you, not just when it's fun, but when it's messy, not just when you're winning, but when you're falling apart. That's not something to take lightly. That's love proving itself not through words, but through a pattern. ChatGPT said, there's something fundamentally revealing about the way someone handles conflict. Love, when it's real, doesn't evaporate in the face of disagreement. It intensifies its commitment to understanding. And that's what sets authentic connection apart from fleeting attraction. When someone is truly in love, their instinct during conflict is not to win, not to dominate, and certainly not to escape, but to preserve the bond. This is deeply rooted in psychological maturity. Individuals who've cultivated emotional resilience don't view conflict as a threat to love, but as an opportunity to deepen it. They recognize that discomfort is part of human closeness. The question isn't whether conflict will arise, it's how it's handled when it does. Does the person shut down? Do they lash out? Or do they stay engaged, even when emotions run high? There's an inherent nobility in someone who can remain grounded when emotions flare. And that's not weakness, it's strength. It takes extraordinary inner stability to listen when you feel hurt, to stay when walking away would be easier, to seek resolution instead of retaliation. That's what real love does. It doesn't default to self-preservation. It leans into the shared responsibility of healing. You can measure the depth of someone's love not by how they act when things are good, but by how they act when things fall apart. Do they dehumanize you in anger, or do they fight to preserve your dignity even when they disagree with you? Do they care more about being right or about being in right relationship? These moments expose values more than words ever can, because values are revealed under pressure. Philosophically, this reflects a deeper truth about love as a moral act. Love isn't simply about how we feel. It's about how we choose to respond. When a person consistently chooses to de-escalate, to return to dialogue, to honor you, perspective, even while asserting their own, they're speaking a powerful truth. I value us more than I value being comfortable. And that's rare. In a culture that teaches people to protect their ego above all else, someone who sees conflict as a path to closeness rather than a signal to withdraw is someone acting out of deep emotional intelligence and deeper love. So pay attention when a person doesn't just tolerate conflict, but navigates it with care. Because in those moments, they're not just showing emotional maturity, they're proving love's endurance